Hey guys, how we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. It is Friday, May the 24th, 2024, and I think it's a bit of an understatement to say that it has been a big week in boxing. Not so much here in Australia, but definitely overseas, inside and outside the ring. So we'll go through all that and more as we get going. So onto the Australian scene. There's not a lot happening in the last week, but there is a big event next week. It is the fourth installment of the Premier Boxing Series, maybe possibly the last one that Ace Boxing does for a little while. They have got another one on June 19th, the Premier Boxing Series, but it will be outsourced to Team Alice, who will do their show from Melbourne. But this one next week is at the Southport Sharks in Queensland. Should be a really good card, actually. The two main fights on that bill, which will be shown on 7 Plus. I was going to say 7 Mate, but it's 7 Plus. So make sure you get the app. So next Wednesday, May the 29th, headlined by Dan Hill, 5-1. Now he's going to take on Tai Kyun Kim, who's 9-1-1. So both of these guys come to fight. This will be a real crowd pleaser. Dan Hill did lose to Dylan Biggs last year, but has backed it up with a win over Nathan Webber since. And Tai Kyun Kim coming off a big second round knockout of prospect Isaias Seti. So that should be a really, really good fight to headline that card. The main support on that card will be the females. Deanna Hobbs, 11-2-1. She'll fight Angel Rushton, who's 4-1. Hobbs coming off a disputed or controversial 10-round draw over Tawana Campbell, and Rushton coming off a decision win over Xiala Tomei. And interesting that Deanna Hobbs actually has a fight scheduled 4 weeks after this fight with Taylor Jensen on the big Wildfighter show at the Pullman Hotel in Melbourne. So not wasting any time there. So that's next Wednesday, May the 29th, 7 Plus. So make sure you subscribe to that app or join up. I think it's free. And or tune in next week to what is a great concept, the Premier Boxing Series. So let's get on now to the world scene. And look, there's probably no bigger news in the last week, of course, than Alexander Usyk becoming the first undisputed heavyweight champion in the four-belt era. He improved to 22-0 with a, I was going to say a controversial, but I don't think it was. It was a split 12-round decision over Tyson Fury. He drops to 34-1-1. The final scores there, or the official scorecards, 115-112 for Usyk, 114-113 for Usyk, and 114-113 for Tyson Fury. Look, not much more to say about the fight. I'm sure you've seen it. The ninth round knockdown was the difference between being a draw and a win for Alexander Usyk. There has been a lot of people, I will say, that have said Tyson Fury won the fight. I myself scored it 115-112 for Alexander Usyk, so 7 rounds to 5, and the knockdown as well. So either way that you've seen it, doesn't really matter. First fight in a long time, one of these mega fights that have actually lived up to the billing, and it was a great event in Saudi Arabia, and looks like they're going to do it again in October. One thing that it will not be for, though, is for the undisputed title. I'm still shaking my head over this. The IBF will strip newly crowned champion Alexander Usyk. Well, not newly crowned. He obviously had the belt beforehand, but the IBF have stripped him of, or will strip him of, their title, and it looks like Filip Hrgović and Daniel Dubois will contest that title, and then the winner of that will most likely fight Anthony Joshua. Now, in a perfect world, maybe the winner of Hrgović and Dubois fight Joshua, and the winner of that gets the winner of Fury and Usyk. I'm not so sure. My personal opinion is if Usyk beats Fury in the rematch, that he will retire. And I've got a feeling the same thing, that if Fury does lose that fight as well, he may retire as well. If Fury wins, though, I think we'll definitely see the Joshua-Fury long-awaited fight, hopefully at Wembley Stadium in front of 90,000 fans. So it's a little bit of a shame that the IBF have spoiled the party by stripping Usyk. But in this crazy world of boxing, nothing surprises me anymore. And let's just hope that down the track that we get back to an undisputed champion, and no matter who is in each corner, the fighting for the four belt. So on the undercard of that fight, Jai Pataya, he won a 12-round decision over Marius Briedis for the vacant IBF Cruiserweight title. Jai's vacant IBF Cruiserweight title. He was stripped, of course, for not defending. He was stripped for wanting to fight before having the mandatory against Brutus, which just doesn't make sense to me. Brutus wasn't in a position to fight when Jai wanted to fight. So Jai, with approval from Brutus, by the way, said he was going to have a fight in the meantime, which he did. The IBF, again, with the strange moves, decided to strip Jai Opetaia. But anyway, these guys fought for the vacant belt, and Jai winning a unanimous 12-round decision, 117, 111, and 116, 112 times 2. He improved to 25-0. Brutus dropped to 28-3. What now for Jai Opetaia, who did survive a few anxious moments later in the fight? Brutus did get to him. It was an accidental headbutt. But Jai did show a few cracks in the final 2 rounds, but again held on to get the win. I'm not quite sure what happens with Jai now. Does he hang around and try and unify the belts, or does he go to heavyweight? I would think especially as a result of those final couple of rounds, even though it would have been hard with that broken nose, I would think that maybe he just stays at cruiserweight for a couple of more fights and then goes to heavyweight after that and chases the big bucks like Holyfield, Usyk, Spinks did before him, and I think he can really make that jump. But as for Brutus, not quite sure. I think he's 40 years old this year, so he may retire. But judging by that performance, I still think he has enough left to maybe win one of those other belts. Speaking of the other belts, Badou Jack has, I won't say called out Jai Opetaia, and if he has, it's been respectfully, has said to Jai Opetaia, hey, I'm more than willing to put my WBC belt on the line if it can be made. So let's see, maybe we get Jai Opetaia, Badou Jack, maybe later in the year, probably in Saudi Arabia. The other fights on the card, Anthony Kachachi, I think that's how you pronounce it, Kachachi, improved to 22-1 by taking the IBF super featherweight or 130-pound title of Joe Cordina, who dropped to 17-1. That was an eighth round stoppage, as I said. Sergey Kovalev didn't come out on the right end of a decision, loss to Robin Sirwan Safar. Kovalev dropped to 35-1-1. Safar improved to 17-0. That was at cruiserweight. And in the other sort of fight of magnitude on that card, Frank Sanchez was upset by Ajit Caballero, who improved to 25-0. Sanchez dropped to 24-1 by 7th round stoppage. And just one more thing on that card from Saudi Arabia. It's been reported that there was 20+ million illegal live streams of that card, and it resulted in a loss of $120 million to the organisers. So just staggering numbers there to think that $120 million of revenue was missed out on. Look, a lot of those fight fans probably wouldn't have bought the fight even if they couldn't access an illegal stream. So even if you cut that in half, it's still a $60 million loss, which probably would have been the purses of the 2 main event fighters. So it looks like big business is the illegal streams out there. Another fight that happened last weekend, big upset. Well, I think it was an upset. Denis Baranchyk took the vacant WBO lightweight or 135-pound title with a 12-round decision over Emmanuel Navarrete. Baranchyk improved to 19-0. Navarrete dropped to 38-2-1. The score was 116, 112, 115, 113 for Baranchyk. And surprisingly, 116, 112 for Navarrete. Big week or so for the Ukrainian fighters. Of course, Vasily Lomachenko beat George Kambosos the week before. And on that day as well, Alexander Usyk, of course, lifting the undisputed heavyweight title from Tyson Fury. So will we see maybe an all-Ukrainian fight between Lomachenko and Baranchyk? Remains to be seen, but what a fight that would be as well. Big news outside of the ring, and I'm still trying to get my head around it. Still reading a little bit more into it, I will say, is Ryan Garcia. We know he tested positive to Ostarine, I think it's called, a couple of weeks ago. Well, the B sample has come back, and that indeed was positive as well. There was apparently, and again, I'm not right across the all the details so far. It's only sort of new to hand, and I'm still trying to get my head around it, as I said. But there was a hair sample as well sent away. I'm pretty sure that might have been negative, but the B sample of the original test was positive. So Looks like it's going to be bad news for Ryan Garcia anyway, who surprisingly and as usual with the internet and social media, an old tweet has come up from him from a couple of years ago with the Conor Benn situation when he absolutely went to town on Conor Benn about being a cheat. And now here we are a couple of years later and he's in the same boat. Of course, he swears black and blue it is false, but unfortunately, I don't think we can, we can ignore, the facts that the A and B sample have both proven positive. So again, still a few things to come to light, but not surprisingly, Devin Haney and his dad, Bill, are looking to have the fight overturned, so he will be the winner. And even, I'll get to actually Devin Haney on another note in a minute, but they're also, again, as I was looking to have the fight overturned, I would think a more likely outcome would be that the fight would be ruled a no contest. And so neither fighter would have a blemish. Well, Haney wouldn't have that blemish on his record. Garcia would have the no contest with an asterisk beside it, of course. And he would receive a significant fine and suspension. So I suppose the question comes in, what is the suitable penalty for Ryan Garcia? I would think if it's undisputed that he's guilty of testing positive to Ostarine, and I'm not really across the whole drug thing and what it does and how it enhances it, but if it is on the banned drug list and it is as bad as what they're saying, I would think 2, 3, even 4-year suspension for Garcia, and maybe a big percentage of his purse is issued as a fine. But again, not quite hanging Ryan Garcia yet, because we're just not 100% sure yet. It's just come out that it's positive. I'm sure there'll be a comeback from Ryan Garcia's legal team, and I'm sure this is not the last we'll hear of it. But as it stands, the B sample positive, so I'll wait to see what happens to Ryan Garcia. Just on Devin Haney now, he's also under the pump from former opponent and former champion Regis Prograis, because he's saying he wants his WBC belt back. Now, the reasoning for this is in California, and again, I've got to look into this a little bit further. In California, there are limits on the amount of weight that you're allowed to put on after a weigh-in. Now, I thought it was contract to contract, fighter to fighter, whatever it might be, sanctioning body to sanctioning body, where it's all agreed to beforehand. There's no concrete thing in place by states, countries, whatever. But Prograis is saying that he put on 25 pounds. This is Haney before their fight. And in the state of California, of course, the fight took place in San Francisco. In the state of California, you're not allowed to put on that much weight. Now, I don't know why there wasn't anything said after the weigh-in. I'm sure they would have had to have, of course, to know the amount of weight that Haney put on, they would have had to have weighed him and Prograis. So I'm not quite sure why a representative of Prograis' team at the time didn't raise this to the authorities. Again, I'm going to read a little bit more into it, but the bottom line is Regis Prograis said, no, you put on 25 pounds, that wasn't allowed, and I want my WBC belt back. So never a dull moment in that 140-pound division is there at the moment. So again, we'll see what happens with that one. Big fight this weekend. Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall will meet in the, is it a highly anticipated rematch? I'm not quite sure. Of course, Josh Taylor won a very controversial decision over Catterall a couple of years ago. This is number 2. It'll take place in Leeds in the UK. Taylor 19-1, Catterall 28-1. Hasn't been a lot of build-up to it, of course. It's been almost buried in the Fury-Usyk build-up and the fallout. So, look, for one, I'm looking forward to seeing the fight. I know a lot of people aren't. And not that the first fight was overly exciting, but I think this time we might see a few more fireworks. I'm actually picking Catterall to get the job done this time, and who knows, will we see number 3? All right, and now another little bit of drama outside the ring. I think we said last week that Saul Canelo Alvarez, his IBF mandatory William Skull, has been put up as his next fight, mandatory by the IBF. Now, the WBO have joined the party and have said that Diego Pacheco, and again, like William Skull, I don't know much about him at all. He's 21-0. The WBO have said, no, now you must fight Diego Pacheco. So this is going to be very interesting to see what happens with Canelo Alvarez. Does he fight Skull to keep his IBF belt, or does he fight Pacheco to keep his WBO belt? How does the WBC and WBA come into all this? Do they push forward the mandatories? I don't think we've got anything to worry about with the WBC, because Benavidez has been the mandatory for 3 years now, and they've allowed Canelo to continually avoid him. But this is a fascinating one because the WBO and in particular the IBF have been known, as we've seen now with the heavyweight situation, where the IBF will enforce their mandatory and will strip the champion if the criteria hasn't been met. So if the WBO decide to follow suit, we could have 2 belts up for grabs at 168, and Canelo just the WBA and WBC champion. So who will he fight? Will it be Berlanga, which is the sort of the leader, I suppose, as people's or fight experts' tips out there? Or does he fight Pacheco for the WBO belt and risk losing his IBF belt? Or does he fight Skull and risk losing his WBO belt? This is Canelo Alvarez we're talking about, so I'm still to be convinced that any of those organizations will strip him. But now it is well and truly put to Canelo. Which way are you going to head? So, again, we'll keep an eye on that one. A big fight that's been announced in the last week. Teofimo Lopez will defend his WBO 140-pound title in Miami, Florida on June 29th against Steve Claggett. Claggett is 38-7-2. Lopez is 21. I'm not quite sure why Lopez would, unless that Claggett is the mandatory. I don't think he is. I'm not quite sure why he would be pretty much wasting his time fighting him when there's plenty of other big fights out there at 140. That's only something Teofimo Lopez can answer, of course. Also on that undercard will be Robeisy Ramirez, 13-2. He'll fight Brandon Leon Benitez, 21-2 for the WBO 126-pound title. And one more fight that has been announced. I'm not so excited about it, but it's got to be mentioned. Joe Joyce, 16-2, will fight Derek Chisora. Yes, Derek Chisora has been ruled out again at 34-13. July 27 at the O2 Arena in London. So those two guys will lock horns there. Again, I'm not quite sure if it has any relevance in the scheme of things, but in the heavyweight division, you never know. If Joe Joyce gets over Chisora, then maybe he gets back in the calculations and might get another crack at one of the belts, or maybe I don't think he'll get a third fight with Zhang, but you never know. There might be fights, rematch with Joseph Parker or whoever. At least there'll be some options out there, and it gets him back on the winning list anyway. So, guys, that is it for May 27, is it? 24, I should say. I just had to have a quick look at my phone there. May 24th, 2024. Hope you have a great weekend watching the fights, and we'll catch you next week.